platform, it's Rowan. So obviously on this channel we've talked about books before a lot. I also made a video at the beginning of this year about the most anticipated book to movie adaptations of 2020. But for this video I thought I would talk about movies which are about books or writing or writers. So I picked 5 movies about writing to talk about in the video today. The first one, which actually inspired this video, is Little Women. So the latest film Little Women, as I'm sure everyone knows, is based on the book Little Women. And in it there's a character called Jo who wants to be a writer. That is like her dream, that is her passion. And there is a scene in the movie where the worst possible thing that could happen to a writer happens to Jo. She loses her manuscript. She loses all of her writing that she's done. Can you imagine? That scene was like I was watching a horror movie. Honestly, terrifying. If any of you are writers or maybe aspiring novelists or poets, just can you imagine? I mean, honestly, if that whole scene is not just a reminder to back up all of your work, just in case, I don't know what is. And I also think the film does something really interesting with Jo as a writer because she is writing the story of Little Women within the film itself. We see her right at the beginning trying to sell the manuscript of what has happened to her sisters. And so the movie and the filmmaker Greta Gerwig end up making some really interesting points about the way in which women's stories are viewed even now, but definitely back then. Plus it makes for a really interesting ambiguous ending where we're not sure whether what we're looking at is what actually happened to Jo and her sisters in the story, or if it's just something that Jo has been told to write because it might be more appealing. Which brings me on to my second recommendation, probably the most emotionally devastating film on this list, Atonement. So the writer character in Atonement is Bryony, who's played by Saoirse Ronan. When she's a little kid at the beginning of the movie, she loves to make up stories. She writes a play for her and her cousins to act out. She very much has always been super passionate about stories. As the film continues, we realise that impulse to tell stories and that runaway imagination might actually affect way more people than just herself, and not always in the best ways. At the heart of the movie are these really interesting questions about the role of a writer. Is it your obligation to tell the exact truth of what happens, or can you embellish when you're involving the stories of real people? If you've been through or even caused something traumatic to happen, can writing be a way of working through those feelings? I won't say anything more because I don't want to spoil it. It is an amazing film and an incredible book as well if you want to read it before you watch it. The third recommendation is an amazing teen movie called The Duff. So I am obsessed with when in teen movies they just happen to be studying a book that's super relevant to the experiences of the main characters. So Easy A and The Scarlet Letter is another great example of this. The Duff has the main character Bianca be an aspiring student journalist who's been asked to write about homecoming. And so it's this really well done frame narrative where you know that the journey that she goes through within the movie is going to end up being the thing that she writes about in terms of homecoming, especially because at the beginning she could not think of anything worse than having to write about this super boring subject that she does not care about whatsoever. It's a really classic, fun teen movie that I can really recommend if you're someone who's interested in journalism or writing about your own life experiences in some way. The fourth recommendation is actually a movie that I mentioned in my anticipated releases video. I have now seen it. It is incredible and amazing and I love it. It is The Personal History of David Copperfield. So the heart of the movie is the story of David Copperfield, of his life from when he's very young and growing up and all of the different people that he meets. But one of the most exciting things about it as a movie about writing and being a writer is the excitement and energy around coming up with ideas, of hearing little snippets that he wants to write down because the turns of phrase and the words are so beautiful. It's just a really fantastic celebration of writing and words. If you want to watch a film that's just super colourful and fun and about a delight for the spoken word, then David Copperfield is where it's at. And my final recommendation, number 5, is the film Stranger Than Fiction. It is about a completely ordinary man who suddenly starts to hear a narration of everything that he's doing in his head that only he can hear. He soon recognises the voice in his head as that of a famous author, played by Emma Thompson. And so the whole movie from there becomes about this relationship between author and character, about inspiration and writer's block. It is an absolutely delightful film that I can highly recommend. I would love to hear if you have any recommendations of movies about authors or writing or books, or any films that inspire you as a writer. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to Platform for more bookish videos.